Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, here we are. On behalf of the board, I welcome all members of the audience to this evening's meeting. This meeting is a working session of the board to conduct the business of the district. The agenda for today's meeting has been published, and the agenda items to be discussed and or voted on have been studied by the board members. I would like to introduce the people participating in the meeting tonight. Recording Secretary Shervon Frazier, Superintendent Dr. Michelle Reed, board members Amy Cass, David Kogan, Sandy Hayes, and Jacqueline McGurdy. I am Bob Swain, and I currently serve as the board president. An agenda for this evening is made available online at boarddocs.com, and copies are also located on the table in the back of the room. If you are here to address the board on agenda items, please sign in using the sign-in sheet on the table in the back of the room and take a number which corresponds with the line you were signed in, where you signed in. There will be an opportunity for both virtual and in-person public comments to be shared during the association and public comment portion of the meeting. So our first order of business is our land acknowledgement. We take this time to acknowledge that the North Shore School District occupies unceded coastal Salish lands and have been here since time immemorial. We honor the ways of knowing and ways of being of indigenous peoples and tribal nations who are still here and thriving in our district community. We also acknowledge that this is a working land acknowledgement that will continue to evolve as our partnership with local indigenous peoples and tribal leaders expands. So we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Would the board like to make any changes to the agenda as it has been published? Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, motion and second. Further discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All right, the agenda has been approved 5-0. And I will move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Reed.
Thanks, President Swain. It's been a busy couple weeks since last we met. I had a chance to visit Wellington Elementary, met with parents prior to that meeting in the gym, and Principal Matthias. It was a fabulous morning, and I'd visit all the classrooms that day, but I had to postpone that as I had actually Dree and I, our executive director of in support services, attended the funeral mass for Dean Bowie was that morning. So then the next day I visited Sunrise Elementary and had a great meeting with parents as well in the library, and then had a chance to visit classrooms at Sunrise, and kids are pretty darn excited. Got to meet a class pet, Thomas, the praying mantis, who I didn't realize they actually swam and they molt. Claire, one of the students, explained all of that. We also, last week and this week, have vaccine clinics on site at secondary schools for Pfizer vaccines, and the second shots will be in October. Connected with the Inglemoor High School Music Boosters, who did a fundraiser over the weekend, and they were pretty darn excited about that. And visited soccer, volleyball, and football games. I have the SBAC data. I know the board has asked for data on assessments and those assessment windows, so I think I'll cover those quickly. As you know, this fall, we're going to give last spring's assessments, and the state has set those windows. So for the English language arts and math, those will be between September 27th, which is today, and November 10th. The WA-AIM, which is for our highly impacted students in the special education program. September 27th through November 10th is the state window as well. And then the WA Kids, which is our kindergarten developing skills, started September 1 and will run through November 12. And again, this is for last year's. So third graders last year that are now fourth graders are going to have their fall test based on the end of year third grade proficiencies. And if you're a fifth grader last year and a sixth grader now, same, you would be assessed on last year's fifth grade expectations. So that's the fall testing. And then, of course, we have our traditional spring state testing, which is coming back again. And that will be from March 28th to June 3rd for English and Math, January 31st to May 6th for the highly impacted WA-AIM program. The World Class Instructional Design and Assessment, which is the annual English Language Proficiency Assessments, will be January 31st to March 25th. And we had several schools selected to participate in the National Assessment of Educational Progress assessments, the NAEP assessments, which are Eastridge, Wellington, Leota, North Shore Middle, and Skyview Middle School. We don't select those. The state or the National Department of Education selects those, and those are January 24th to March 4th. So a lot of assessing this year, so we'll know exactly where our students are. Want to mention briefly some testing news, and I'll go into more detail in my reopening update as well as an update on HVAC systems. But to date, we've done 2,259 batches of testing, and 14 of those have been positive. And that was last week's total. 2,259 is a large number, obviously, and that's somewhat over 16,000 students and staff. And we did have some glitches in the software communicating with our internal software. We have a vendor that the State Department of Health has hooked us up with, and then they have sub-vendors. And so making sure that all of those pieces talk to each other in real time and get to staff last week was a little challenging. So we had a few glitches in a few places where it wasn't clear to a classroom teacher who had opted out in some cases because of the software glitches. Staff have worked on that last week, at the end of last week, and we believe we have that resolved at this point, so that shouldn't happen again. But we did have some glitches last week for sure. And we have communicated with several parents and family members about that issue. I will say the good news about last week is that we're less than 1% of positive cases or batches. And of those 14, we have a summary and a dashboard that'll be going live. I think Angie has it set for tomorrow. So we're really excited about the potential, as is the State Department of Health and King County and Snohomish County Health Departments, in terms of being able to immediately identify asymptomatic cases so we can keep classrooms open and schools open and programs running smoothly, as well as obviously our number one priority, which is health and safety. So that's my report to point, and then I will revisit testing data, HVAC systems, and the like in the reopening at the end of the meeting. So any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Appreciate it. All right, now we'll move into our association and public comment section this evening. The North Shore School District Board of Directors has set aside a period of up to 60 minutes to receive updates and comments from association leaders and community members. The board expects all parties addressing the board to present their comments in a way that is civil and respectful. Please speak directly to the board and address matters related to district operations, policies, procedures, and agenda items under consideration by the board. Comment should not make reference to any employee or representative of the district by name or by identifiable reference. There is a complaint process available through the Office of the Superintendent if interested. Washington state law requires that only items on a previously published agenda be discussed at a board meeting. Any new topics brought up during public comment will either receive a later response from a district employee or a board member or be discussed at a future board meeting. So we'll start out with association comments.
Hi, can everybody hear me? I'm not sure with masks. Okay. Hello, Superintendent Reed, school board directors, and community in the room or at home. My name is Melissa Klein, and I am a parent in North Shore. But today I'm here on behalf of North Shore Council PTSA Mental Health Committee. Earlier this year, we submitted a letter to you asking you to continue to make mental health a priority in our schools. We are trying to do our part. We created a mental health committee, hosted a mental health event last May, and have been publishing articles in our council newsletter monthly that focuses on mental health topics and resources. I have a copy of our latest one here for you. I'll give you a QR code at the end. And it focuses on suicide. September is Suicide Awareness Month. It is very important to me personally. I lost my sister to suicide when she was in high school. It is still devastating and was very devastating at that time. I wanted to take this opportunity to speak to you all about an action we all can take today in order to help change the stigma around talking about suicide. I would ask all of you in the room and anyone listening to stop using committed suicide and instead say died by suicide or they took their own life. The word committed has very negative feelings for many and also can remind them of a sin or a crime. Someone considering suicide may be afraid to talk about it because it seems bad. Imagine the change we could make if we all just tried to change our language and encouraged others when we hear it. I think this small change could make a huge impact. I would ask you all to consider making that commitment today. I mentioned earlier my sister. She was 17 when she died and I was only 20. I didn't know the signs of suicide and neither did my single mother. So today I would also ask the district to commit to advertising the Forefront Parent Learn trainings that'll be at all the high schools. I know they're at all 4 comprehensive high schools, and I think the other high schools are also invited to that. I would ask that they are easy to find on the district website, in district communications, hopefully more than once, and maybe even a separate email from student services reminding people of these events. The more people that attend these events, the more people in our community that may be able to help a youth struggling, or even an adult they know struggling. If not for your child, for your child's friend. Think about, a loss of a friend will also affect your child. I leave you with some sobering statistics. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for youth 15 to 24. Native youth suicide is 2.5 times higher than the national average. In 2019, suicide attempts were the highest among youth who were female, Black, and LGBTQ. I believe with education and some small changes in our language around suicide, there is still hope. Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming. All right, now we'll go into our public comment section. As I call your number, please come up to the microphone and state who you are. And there'll be a clock up on the screen. I'll give you a maximum of 3 minutes. So please be aware of that. And, oh, thank you. And I'll call up the first person as number 1. Keep one. Oh, you were number 1. There we go. All right, number 2.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Oh, number 2. Oh, there you go.
The worst thing is the camera's back there.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
hi.
Sorry about that.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Joanne Tolentino, and I'm a grandmother in the, I have a grandchild in the district. I'm here to escalate and demand follow-up to the illegal COVID testing that occurred all over the district last week. I got a letter from you, and I appreciate your response. My situation specifically is that my 8-year-old granddaughter, who was opted out of testing by her parents, was tested on 9/21. The nature of how these tests are administered is where the child comes into the class. A test swab is on every desk, and they all do their own nasal swab. Even though she was opted out, she was not aware of what was going on. She's 8 years old. They're in a place where they trust the adult in the room. They are learning from peers, and they mimic what others do. It's called social development. When trust is broken and social development becomes peer pressure, something is gravely wrong. It is very important to listen carefully now to what I'm about to say, as this is very important. COVID testing is a medical procedure that should be administered by a medical professional. Instead, this isn't even being performed by an adult. It's being done by 8-year-olds. I'm demanding an official investigation, kindly demanding, that you open up an investigation by this board and look into every opt-out situation, and to guarantee that no further medical procedures on underage minors are illegally performed in the schools. Recognizing that this is in direct opposition of expressed opt-out by the parents, the opt-out process in and of itself is a violation of parental authority. It implies that all parents have all the means to do so. This is a major equity breakdown. We have language, device, and many other barriers that prevent parents from opting out. Just as before, the school must return to opt-in consent. Medical procedures on minors cannot be performed in an opt-out capacity. Also, how did we find out about this? From an 8-year-old 2 days after the test. Have you made any efforts to contact the opted-out parents who had their children illegally tested without the parents' knowledge? Have you? I don't know. My daughter-in-law did not get any response. Do I only have 38 seconds? Oh, in addition to this investigation, I'm also demanding total transparency. What is the process for who receives these opt-out forms? Where do they go? And why are the teachers apparently uninformed? This board is directly responsible for governance and oversight. This is an oversight of epic proportions. No child should be tested again in absent the express permission of their parents. This board, including the superintendent, as well as the adults present in the classroom when it occurs, are all responsible for following the law and are culpable in the illegal actions I've outlined. It must cease and desist with immediate effect. I will expect answers to these questions, hopefully by email, before the end of the week, as this is a time sensitive with weekly testing occurring. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for coming. Number 3.
Good evening. My name is Shelby Roberto, and I am a parent of 2 children in North Shore School District, Leota and Woodin, as well as a practicing nationally certified school psychologist, teacher, and educational leader. I am here tonight because of a safety concern for our middle school children. Fall has arrived, which means our days are becoming shorter and darker. I am concerned about the safety of our middle school children walking to bus stops and waiting for school buses in the dark or near dark for the months ahead. The district has moved up start times for middle school students to accommodate longer sleeping patterns for high school students. However, you did not take into account the safety of our middle school children. Our children will be walking to bus stops without appropriate light in the dark, dark, dreary days, many by themselves, and waiting on the side of the dark roads. This is a safety issue that needs to be addressed and changed by you. I am sure that bus routes were driven and bus schedules created in order to get our children to school on time. However, you overlooked the realities of children walking in the darkness or near darkness without adequate streetlights, without supervision, and potentially on unsafe roads. You are asking our 11 to 14-year-old children to do this so our high school students can get adequate sleep. I understand the changes an adolescent brain is undergoing and the amount of sleep they need, but the schedule changes are not significant enough and jeopardize the safety of our younger children. This school board needs to be committed to the safety of all children and needs to re-examine start times while considering what time they will be walking to bus stops, the lighting on these routes, and what roads they will be standing on while waiting for the bus. Start times change every year anyways. This needs to be addressed for the safety of all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 4.
It hasn't been a very good 2 weeks for our family or me. In a high school physics class, students were asked to answer a question: do you feel racially or ethnically minimized? And if so, how and what do you intend to do about it? I asked the principal of the school what the purpose of this was and what, if any, data was being collected from it. He said he didn't know about it or the reasoning behind it. I've tried to get information as to whether or not this was done in an individual class or if all the classes are required to give their responses. I haven't gotten any answers as to why time was taken out of a physics class who had to answer the questions, why the question was asked in the first place, and what was the information being used for. On the back table, I've placed some data sheets from OSPI containing the report cards for the 4 high schools in our district. These are the most recent and are from the school year 2018 and 19. Personally, I don't think the scores have improved during our remote learning, so we'll go with these for now. The highest math performance score is 73, and the lowest is 60. The highest science score is 60, and the lowest is 36. My point in sharing this with you is that I think teachers like the one who had the students take possibly at least 15 minutes out of their class instruction time is doing a great disservice to the students, taxpayers, and our community. They are taking time to promote their worldview, ideology, and political viewpoints rather than giving our kids the best opportunities to learn the subjects they are hired to teach to the best of their ability. Feel free to take any information that you like back there. If you feel this time away from academics is justified, I would like to see the data you are collecting and what is being used for and what improvements in education it is fulfilling. Otherwise, let's choose to instruct students in North Shore School District with the subjects they came to learn about. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, speaker number 5.
Good evening. My name is Alfonso Bautista. I have a 5-year-old kid. He's interested in cars, trains, planes, normal kid. The other day I was reading one of the books from the school called Separated is Never Equal. It talks about Mexican kids that were separated and sent to another school and blah, 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 blah. Maybe the intentions are good, but I don't know what's going on, what happened. Why do you keep talking about race all the time? What is that obsession? I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, this is the most diverse country in the world and the most tolerant. Everybody wants to come to the United States. Everybody wants to be part of this country. Keep talking about race, race, and race, and race. What a terrible obsession you have that in the school. My 5-year-old, although we love for him to follow my steps and go to law school, he's not interested. In this book talks about lawsuit, someone took the stand, they went to court. He doesn't even know where California is located or what is a lawsuit. I would love to go and sit with him and talk about constitutional law every evening after work. But he's 5, come on. He doesn't have to think about race. Oh, now you're giving enough weapons to the bully kids to start bullying my kid because he's a Mexican kid. You have to just to keep talking about race. Why? I don't get it. What is this obsession? Who was the genius that authorized this book? I want to know, for a 5-year-old kid that talks about lawsuits, about someone taking the stand for 5 hours. I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand that. Who thought about it? I find it very offensive. I feel free in this country. I feel welcome. I haven't seen any racial issues here. People that talks about race all the time, those are the real racists. If you keep bringing the race all the time, you are the real racists. I'm just fed up with this. Since I went to school here the first time, when I started going to college, first thing I heard about race. Oh yeah, race here, race there. What a terrible obsession, my God. Let it be. I mean, what's the problem? You can be my friend. I don't care if you are green, blue, yellow, black. I don't care. As long as I like you, you're my friend. But you have to put the idea in the kids at the age of 5. It's rather insulting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you for your comments. Speaker number 6.
Hi, my name is Denise Thorson. I have 3 students in the North Shore School District. And I am also here to talk about this batch testing. I understand that you're going to probably say that this flow chart is out of your control. It is based on the recommendations from public health officials. However, this batch testing is also voluntary. And as a school district, as a school board, you have made the decision without going to the people that you are supposed to represent to ask them how they feel about doing this batch testing. So you have elected to participate in a voluntary program that is going to have very significant negative effects on these students. Why? Because whether you opt in or opt out, you are still subject to the consequences of anyone coming up with a positive test. And it's flawed in that way because now children, healthy children who have tested negative, will be at home again. There's significant learning loss with that. This could have very dire consequences for our student athletes, for our high schoolers who are trying to graduate, for anybody who is trying to have maybe a normal school year and just get through it. So I think as a board, you owe an explanation to the 23,000 students that you represent and to the parents as to why you feel that this is a valid program to be a part of. There are clear distinctions between vaccinated and unvaccinated. You have wide swaths of population that cannot be vaccinated, and it shouldn't be used as a penalty against those who choose not to. So either you test negative and you're able to go to school, or this program should just be scrapped. Test the people who come in with symptoms. Do something else if you feel hell-bent on having these processes in place. But this is a voluntary program, and it honestly should be terminated. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 7.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Black, and I live in Bothell. I'm a mom of 2 kids with autism and ADHD in elementary school. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. First, I'd like to thank the board for reinstating the remote commenting option. I don't know if anybody chose to do it, but this is really important for inclusion because many families, including single parents, parents of elementary students, and parents of disabled students, face significant barriers to in-person attendance at meetings like this, particularly the ones that occur at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Offering a remote option is a great way to practice inclusion at the district level, and I encourage you to continue it and not discontinue it, even if COVID changes. That brings me to the main topic I want to discuss today, which is inclusion in NSD. Inclusion means serving disabled students where they are and treating them as equal members of the community instead of segregating them from their peers. By definition, it cannot be a program offered only at a handful of schools, but must be a core tenet of every school in the district and the district administration itself. True inclusion requires open and clear communication. Ask any special education family in the district and they will tell you it's hard to find information about disability and special education from district websites, and communication from staff is inconsistent and varies from school to school. For example, special education doesn't appear in the top-level menus of individual school websites the way that other services like HiCap and ELL do. If an elementary parent wants to find out what kinds of special education classrooms are available in their school, they have to go to the district website, find the Continuum of Services pages, and search for their school in 5 different PDF documents. Another example is the lack of specific details about district efforts to be more inclusive. Many special education families are interested in the inclusive practices pilot that's being piloted at Ruby Bridges and Kokanee Elementaries. Yet there's not much published information about when these practices will be deployed to other schools, or even what specific practices and policies are being implemented. Families want to know, when will the other disabled students in the district have the same level of support and acceptance as the pilot schools? Do the inclusive practices include policies to provide more appropriate preventative behavior interventions that are often denied at other schools, like occupational therapy for sensory processing deficits and evidence-based behavior therapies for students with autism? Is there a disability awareness and inclusion curriculum for the general education students? What kind of disability inclusion training is being provided to general education staff? These are all things that should be communicated to other special education families in the district who are still waiting for inclusion to come to their schools. The Lake Washington School District provides quarterly newsletters to special education families and holds regular parent events to discuss matters of inclusion, disproportionality, new curriculum, and professional learning. Why doesn't NSD support its special education families like this? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sorry, taking some notes here. All right, speaker number 8. Oh, that person scratched their name off. Speaker number 9.
I am here to express my concern for the continued abuse of our children in regards to masking and testing in this district. First of all, I would like a peer-reviewed report from you on the efficacy of the mask. In all of my research, I have yet to find one example that masks work and numerous ones showing that they do not work. As far as the testing goes, to begin with, the inventor of the PCR test has told us that they were not made for this type of testing, as they can't differentiate between the common cold, influenza, or COVID, which, by the way, has never been isolated by anyone. My question to you is, how are you identifying COVID or variants when the testing is faulty? All of this leads to unnecessary missed days in class and more paranoia. According to the powers that be, children have a 99.99% chance of recovery and very rarely spread to teachers. Ever since this pandemic started, teachers have been so afraid of getting COVID that they have refused to do that in class until now. I realize that all of these mandates are coming from our all-knowing governor who follows orders, not science. Our enrollment is down considerably, so I can't help but wonder how much money the school board is getting by following these ridiculous mandates and where is it coming from? My last question is, are we going to harm our children by all these mandates that don't affect them to save ourselves? I hope to get your answers soon.
Thank you, Sherry. Last speaker, number 10.
Good evening. My name is Jen Pearson, and I'm a parent of an elementary and a middle school student in the North Shore School District. In 7 years, I have never felt compelled to speak out at a school board meeting, and I tend to follow the mindset with over 23,000 students. It's going to be impossible to satisfy every parent's wishes, including my own. Tonight, however, I could not in good conscience sit at home and allow you to think that you are doing a good job putting the North Shore students' education first. 2 weeks ago, parents at my son's middle school and schools across the district learned that there was no plan for educating students while they were in quarantine. Though I know a plan was finalized and approved last Thursday, the fact that it wasn't discussed and published before the first day of school is a gross failure on the part of this district. Parents have been asked over the last year and a half to be partners with this district in our students' education, but many times we were left out of the conversation. If we had been given a seat at the table, maybe our insight into educating what our kids need would have shown and highlighted this gap in planning. I understand that dealing with this pandemic is adding an extra planning burden on the district, but keeping our kids safe from COVID cannot overtake the need to provide an education to our students. And asking parents to be partners but not giving them a voice does not support a healthy partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. That's it for our live in person. We had one person sign up for call-in, but they declined to speak at the last minute. So we'll keep that going, and hopefully more people will take advantage of it. All right. We'll now move on to our adoption of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Second?
All right, it's been motion seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All right, the motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, we only have one action item this evening, and that is food and nutrition services, adult meal prices. Dr. Reed.
Thank you, President Swain. This requires board action as per OSPI. And the Food and Nutrition Department ran the Seamless Summer option instead of the National School Lunch Program for the 21-22 school year, or intends to, which allows the district to offer free meals to all students. These adult meal prices were adjusted to meet the reimbursable meal amount for the Seamless Summer option per the USDA regulations. So adult meal prices need to be adjusted again to meet this new requirement, and the adult price needs to be more or greater than the free reimbursement, so which is the SSO plus the value of USDA foods. So the new adult meal price will be set at $4.75. I would recommend your approval, so we're in keeping with the USDA regulations.
All right, thank you, Dr. Reed. Any questions? Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'm just
Dr. Hayes?
going to confirm this is a program that existed all of last year and that the federal government has extended it throughout this coming school year. Is that correct?
That is correct. They've extended it this school year with some limitations.
Thank you.
And as a
Yes?
follow-up question, Superintendent Reed, we know that signing up for free and reduced lunch is a trigger for many other services for students and families. And so I know there's been an effort, both actually with partnering with PTAs and communication-wise, to still ask families that are eligible under the rules to still fill out the paperwork. And has that been ongoing, and are we able to get some traction again this fall in terms of helping students sign up for those services?
I know that we've sent forms out and reminding families, and I can provide an update on the numbers. I don't have that this evening, the numbers of forms returned. I will say it's not probably as high a rate as previously, because at this point, there's less of an incentive, I guess, for families to do that unless it triggers something. And since at this point meals are provided to all students, other services are obviously impacted, though, and our Title I numbers for future support will be in the balance a bit. But let me check on those numbers.
Yeah, we can keep working on that, obviously, throughout the year if we need to.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second to approve. Further discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote. All right, the motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to our performance reviews. We have two performance reviews this evening. The first is superintendent communication to the board, and the second is public reports. And we'll start with superintendent communication with the board, parameter number 4. So, Dr. Reed.
Thanks, President Swain. I also want to backtrack a minute on the forms, the free and reduced lunch forms. The other thing that's connected this year and has previously not been is the college-bound scholarship. Those are automatically now being synced with our system so that families don't need to fill out separate forms. So that would be, for sure, a real incentive for folks to get those forms turned in. And it's also something I think people have asked for some time, that there's a seamless integration of those forms and the applications. Damon Schuneman, I think, will provide more information on that as we get closer to Goal 5, because that's a data point, as you know, we track as part of Goal 5. So looking at P4, this is around communication to the board, so requiring regular monitoring data, relevant trends, facts, and information. It's all the different channels that our communication occurs on. I clarifying that as of September 27th this evening, that this report is accurate, and essentially have listed all the possible ways that we connect on communications. And Lisa asked this year in the communications department, we added a couple sections as well as part of our updated communications, both to the board and as well with the community.
All right, thank you, Dr. Reed. Any questions for Dr. Reed on this topic? Comments?
No, so starting with Superintendent Parameter 4, communication with the board. Just want to say that throughout this last year, there's always been quite a lot of details shared with the board, but with the pandemic, that detail is increasingly technical and time-driven and shifting as, for example, like the quarantine change from Snohomish County Health, right, which impacted how we could affect quarantined, and the fact it had to be worked out with King County Health since we're in both counties. All those level of details are coming very timely to the board, which is the essence of this parameter. Having this information is especially critical for the board right now, and I find it's been consistent in its timeliness and its depth.
We also, thank you, Director Cass, we also added the reviews of strategic action plans. And I'm really proud of our principals and leadership teams with their planning for the year. And I think it's important that you have an opportunity to see all of those plans, both at the beginning of the year, mid-year, and at the end of the year. So want to call out our principals for doing great work on that and their staffs.
Thank you, Director Cast. Anyone else?
I'd like to add a comment and commend Dr. Reed and her staff for keeping the board up to speed with every kind of issue that's affecting our students and staff and district. And I feel that the information is comprehensive and timely. And on occasion, when I have a question, Dr. Reed gathers the information, quickly provides it. So I think the communication and keeping us up to speed has been exceptional.
Thank you, Director Kogan. Mr. McGurty.
I'll just concur with Directors Cast and Kogan. The data, the information has been fast and furious, particularly in the last year and a half, and with several people here on the board very data-minded and in need of data and sifting through it ourselves. The provision of that has just been stellar, so thank you.
Thank you, Director McGurty. Director Hayes.
Yeah, I'm just doing the math of the last year and the changes in the way the communication happened and how quickly that had to adapt. I'm thinking a great example is the school visits. Rather than abandoning them altogether, they were adapted and so that we could still be in school, see what was happening. And so it's a great example of how adaptive we've had to be over the last year to make sure that we see all the information, good and bad, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Director Hayes. I agree. As always, the communication is excellent. You provide the board with a variety of information, and it's usually timely, and you get back to us when we call during the week. We really appreciate just the timeliness of the info and the depth of reports and source data, et cetera. So I think the parameter performance has been excellent.
A lot of weekends and evenings as I start
Yeah.
looking at the calendar. I feel like we've been on the phone more in the last 18 months than I have with my family.
Yeah. All right. Not hearing any other comments. We have three choices to make. Find the superintendent in compliance with this parameter, making adequate progress towards compliance, or not in compliance. Is there a motion for one of the three?
I'll make a motion to find Superintendent Reed in compliance with Superintendent Parameter 4.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been motion second, and we find Dr. Reed in compliance with this particular parameter. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right, I'll move on to monitoring report for the superintendent. Parameter number 5. This is public reports. Dr. Reed.
Thank you, President Swain. And this one really highlights the work of our communications team. And oh my goodness, they've been just another group that's been working 24/7. I think we've been on the phone at different times at all hours, all through the summers for the last couple summers and through every break season. I want to share that this monitoring report again is accurate as of this evening, and that we also have a very highly rewarded or awarded communications team. They received a National Golden Achievement Award, Awards of Merit in the e-newsletter from the state Public Relations Association, and multiple awards of excellence and an honorable mention. So this is a talented team that has worked very well with a variety of departments, and to be recognized by the National School Public Relations Association for their Digital Media Excellence Awards is pretty outstanding. We're very proud of them and their work. And as I said, they've worked really well with our instructional technology, racial and educational justice departments, curriculum, instruction and assessment departments, and our regional assistant superintendents. So they've added work in the capital project planning area and have done a nice job of highlighting and staying on top of projects, which I think gives the community great feedback on our investments. And so what we've provided you is a variety of channels, again, that communication is being held on. It's a pretty lengthy state. We've also want to call out our budget and finance department. They won a national budget presentation award last year in a pandemic for the thoroughness and transparency of their budget design and reporting. And again, Tracy Patterson, Mike Bailey, Jenna Volek, and the team just did a fabulous job with that as well. So be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Dr. Cast?
I always get
I'm just
nominated
picking
to go
somebody.
first. I'll go first. I'm reserving the right to tag on at the end. So yeah, thank you again for this detailed report, Superintendent Reed. This is a perfect complement for parameter 4, as this one talks about communications of the district to the public. The report does give detailed analysis of the different ways that you and the teams connect on a variety of topics, from Facebook videos to e-newsletters to the State of the Schools events, which is an in-person, all sorts of things. And it has been, with things constantly changing these last 18 months, not only has the communications team and yourself been able to stay on top of constantly shifting information, but also keep on top of communicating around other topics as well. We probably could use another 6 hours in a day to get all the information out, but I know that people are working through weekends constantly over the last 18 months and really putting in a lot of effort to hone it down. Something I'd like to ask a question on, again, and this is part of the extra 6 hours of a day perhaps, but I want to make sure we get it on. We do such a great job of putting things down and noting them and then continuing to work on them. But in terms of working on language and translation support, for example, I know that we've gone from publishing things in English and Spanish and are starting to expand what languages we support. I'd like to learn more about that and see what we can do. Since with our 95 obviously we can't do all 95 languages, but I think it's something that we should grow in sophistication with and depth. Also, something that I'd like to note for the report, something that comes up often when the board does our board self-assessment. There's a board standard that we talk about often as helping ourselves as a board figure out how to better communicate about our work. And I think that the area on the school district website that talks about the school board has definitely improved. But this is still something that we need to keep on. This is an area that we've identified ourselves that we need to work on better. And obviously it's the communication team that helps us do that. So something else I wanted to note down as well. But I think that as we go forward and this year continues to shift, communications is still going to continue to be a heavy lift. And so I appreciate the professionalism of our team and the ability of everyone to pivot as we need to. And I'm looking forward to, I'm looking forward to, again, you're talking about going to soccer games and football games, seeing those, the communications. We're going to be in-person school visits again instead of virtual. There's just, I'm looking forward to getting into the nitty-gritty of science and math curriculum and all that fun stuff in our communications, as well as some very important information items coming up on this agenda as well, our bond and levy proposals. So that's my thoughts and ponderings going forward.
So Director Cass, thank you for the feedback. And I realize we didn't talk about our new language link project this year, but we've rolled out a new translation service for all staff to be able to access in real time. So it doesn't need to get funneled through a district portal. So we'll be sharing more with you about that. We're very excited about that.
That sounds very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cast. Anyone else? Director Kogan?
Thank you, President Swain. Yeah, I'd like to add, communication is as much maybe an art as a science, and it's constantly evolving. A big part of it is technology as well. And I commend the district in the use of a variety of different media to communicate information out to families and students and staff. So I think that's really well done. I think last year we had probably the most challenging year to communicate information for a variety of reasons, one of which was it was rapidly changing throughout the year, the information, so it's really hard to provide the latest guidance when there was uncertainty throughout the whole year and a half last year. So I think, I think we've done a good job. I think it's been challenging, and I think that this is the kind of work that is going to be ongoing. There's always room to communicate more succinctly, more transparently, more effectively on a variety of topics for a variety of listeners. So I think that work has to continue to continue to evolve. But we did a lot of good communication last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kogan. Anyone else? Dr. Hayes?
Yeah, so tempted to wax philosophic here about the way how rapidly how we communicate and the different modalities, and that we no longer have one, the paper that goes home in the backpack. There was a 50-50 shot if you had a middle school student that it would come out of the backpack, but there's so many ways to communicate, and then you add on top of that a layer of a pandemic, and we're isolated, and so trying to stay in touch with our community, our parents, our students is a challenge, and it will continue as the change of technology is exponential. So we know there will just be some new format that we'll have to make sure we're communicating in that way as well. Just an amazing year of being adaptive and innovative. And then in addition to just the format, the information has been changing so rapidly in the last year as the understanding of the virus, the vaccine, changed almost, it felt like, on a daily basis over the last year. So trying that, all of that working together, it's really quite remarkable we got accomplished what we did.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Director McGrady?
Yes, thank you, President Hayes. I'll start off with the fact that most of my comments and thoughts and questions have already been addressed, so thank you to you all. But I agree, it's been a very challenging year and a half, 2 years to keep up with the need for communications. I think the staff has done just amazing things adjusting to the new technology that's needed to communicate. And I mean, the staff, teachers, students, families, everybody was having to turn on a dime to learn the new technologies, to receive the communications as well as to give them out. It's always a partnership and a back and forth. So I think
for the most part, that went as smoothly as I think anyone could really expect it to. There are some areas that, points up that we need to work on. Hopefully we won't have another year like the last one to have to, come up with new methods and new types of communications. But, being able to somehow make sure that everyone is getting what they need, and that's going to be an individual thing depending on the family, the student, staff. And for us as well. I mean, we've discussed at some length in previous study sessions about how the board can more effectively communicate and or make ourselves available to the community. And, keep ourselves up with the technology as well so that we can do that communication. But overall, it's been a stellar year for the communications department.
Thank you, Director McGurty. I don't have anything else to add. I think it was summed up well, especially Director Kogan is pointing out that trying to operate in a world of continually changing information and trying to make the best decisions for the district is a challenge. And I think we've done our best, and Dr. Reed and staff have done their best to try to make good decisions for the common good. And there's always room for improvement, and that's what we're here for, to strive for that. So thank you for your report, Dr. Reed. Okay, board, we have, again, 3 options. Find Dr. Reed in compliance with the parameter of public reports, in compliance, making adequate progress towards compliance, or not in compliance. So is there a motion?
I move that we find Superintendent Reed in compliance with parameter 5.
Second.
All right, it's been motion and second that we find Dr. Reed in compliance with the parameter. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Why don't we take a minute or so? You're filling out your forms with your comments that will be collected for the record. If you need additional time, you can always bring it home, I suppose, and send it back in. All right, well, let's move on to information items. First item on the agenda here is project acceptance. Dr. Reed?
Thank you, President Swain. This evening, there are 3 projects that have been completed. I want to thank Dree Ralph and the planning team. The first one is Eastridge, where we did flooring improvements. And there were a number of floors that were worked on, and Ha was our planner in this particular project. The floors were replaced in the admin area, all classrooms, entry areas, workrooms, and portables at Eastridge. Appreciate Ha's work, and that had a construction cost of roughly $660,000. The final contract amount, we actually came in quite a bit under. Came in at $376,678, and the work has been deemed substantially complete. So that's Eastridge, and the second one was Maywood Hills, or excuse me, this looks like West Hill Elementary School, and Ha again was the planner on this and did a fabulous job. The project scope here was air quality concerns. And so the foam back carpet was holding moisture and required abatement. So classrooms, portable staff room and foyers, and the abatement was determined through assessment. That project was completed on budget for $462,000. And then finally, we have the Maywood Hills project. And this project, again, Ha was in charge of, which was flooring replacement in the admin music room and portables. And this was, again, came in on schedule and on budget at $147,625. So the work, again, was deemed substantially complete, and it's an informational item this evening. I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Any questions? Dr. Hayes?
Yeah, just basically a reminder that the funds for this came from our 2018 bond.
That's correct.
And so that's in the terminology of other capital improvements, being able to replace flooring, roofs, windows, HVAC systems. That all comes from a bond. That funding does not come from the state. So thank you again to our voters. That's just another great example of how, their support, and we appreciate it and what we're able to do with that.
Else? All right, thank you, Dr. Reed. Our next information item is utility extension for the North Shore District Concert Hall at Inglemoor High School. Dr. Reed.
Thank you, President Swain. Again, these are informational items, and there are two fairly routine construction documents. One is the water extension improvement, and then the other is the sewer extension improvement. These guidelines fall under Administrative Procedure 9246P, and the bill of sale for the water extension improvements and the bill of sale for the sewer extension improvements are required for the right to hook up to water and sewer services for the concert hall, which obviously we need because it not only has classroom spaces, but also will be home to a variety of performing arts events. These documents ensure that we have the full authority to transfer title of the sewer and water system to the North Shore, the NUD, that had been paid for, and there are no lawsuits with the project. So these notice of construction easements and agreements for this project were provided to you on July 12th at our July board meeting, and these are simply informational items and pictures that I've sent you again that we can enlarge, but those pictures, I guess hereby referred to as waterworks, the pipes, valves, hydrants, services, and so forth. So informational item, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about those.
Director Hayes, and how excited you are about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you have lots of
Always
questions.
love. Yeah, no, I'm good. Made total sense. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you. All right, our next our next item here is resolution number 839, Educational Programs and Operations Levy.
So thank you, President Swain. This is the first of 3 ballot measure resolutions that I would ask you to consider this evening for a first reading. As you know, our process is to do a first reading on resolutions and talk through questions or concerns and potential modifications with the hope that I can bring back final resolutions at the October 11th board meeting, which would be our second reading, which would then launch our Business and Finance Department actually working to file these measures as ballot measures. So we've discussed these resolutions, or I would say the content that the resolutions support at both our prior study session and then a special meeting again. So we've spent quite a little bit of time discussing these, but this is the first of 3. And this would be one that would be a draft resolution for consideration for what we call our Replacement for Educational Programs and Operations Levy. So be happy to discuss this, and Cynthia Weed is here. Cynthia, do you want to come on up to the front row, please? Cynthia is our attorney at K&L Gates, who helps draft the resolution language as well as ballot language. So Cynthia, thanks for being here this evening. And we'll engage in whatever discussion the board has on this topic. This is the first of 3.
All right, thank you, Dr. Reed. All right, open to questions regarding we had a couple long meetings a week or so ago to discuss all the data and the presentations from staff and the options, and we came to a conclusion as a board to recommend to the community. So here we are for its first reading. So if anyone has additional thoughts, comments.
I just had a logistical question, not on the content, but 4 years ago when the language and laws around our educational programs and operation levies was changed, we had to submit it to OSPI for approval. Does that still exist? Do we still have to do that?
I see Cynthia nodding, and yes, we do still have to submit it to OSPI, and that was a new requirement and continues.
Okay. Thank you. And are they being as efficient as they were 4 years ago? Very good. Okay.
It's my understanding they're being remarkably efficient.
Excellent. Thank you.
Dr. Cast?
Yeah, thank you, President Swain. So I have a question about the information in the resolution and then just kind of general questions about this process. So first of all, in this resolution, the tax rate, which is part of a calculation handed to us in statute. And so it has to do with calculations based off of assessed valuation versus per pupil rates that we're allowed to charge, et cetera. We had talked about when we were in our study sessions a different tax rate, a higher tax rate than what's in this resolution now. And so I just wanted to understand the background of the final calculations that got us to the $1.40, which is 10% less than the $1.54 we had talked about.
So I will say that Mark Pressing, who joined us for the study session, in fact, the last couple study sessions, has identified that the assessed valuation had risen higher than he anticipated, which if the assessed valuation is higher, then to collect the same amount of money, you would use a lower rate. So because it's the amount of money, which is the equivalent to $2,500 per student, because that's the lesser of the two possibilities. So we're trying to hit that $2,500 per student by utilizing the right rate. So the rate is variable. So as the assessed valuation goes up, since we have a limited amount of money, which is the student enrollment times 2,500, then the rate is a bit of a guess based on the assessed valuation. So it's a great catch and a great question. Yeah, the 2021 assessed valuation was released and was 13% of an increase, and our assumptions were at 4%. So thanks, Dugan. Those were very clear. In the planning, quite honestly, over the last number of years, 4 to 6% has been the assumption. But a 13% growth in assessed valuation is what's part and parcel of the rate.
Great. That's very helpful. So, now I have to remember my fraction. So our divisor changed. What the total amount that we had discussed, again, because that's the amount that is handed to us by statute, that hasn't changed. So the total amount to the community is the same, but we just have to calculate it differently because we got handed a different assessed total tax base.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I want to make sure I got that. It's very important. Thank you very much. So, looking through the resolution, that was my only question in terms of the language of the resolution. I do have questions about the process over the next couple months, and I know we don't have all this information yet. But perhaps we do. So in terms of when we go to the second reading at the next board meeting, I think it would be helpful to have, besides just these resolutions, which are a legal requirement, it would be helpful to also have a memo that would describe the strategy behind it in terms of, and summarizing kind of in normal speak, just like we do with our budget document, right? We use some language to describe what we're talking about here and what we're actually proposing in terms of student outcomes, which is something we focused quite a bit on in our study session. So I don't think it has to be, you know, like a book, but just something that can help explain what this is. There are a couple of paragraphs in the resolution that talk about what this funding is used for, but I think also the direction behind it and the how it supports our strategic plan is also a very important conversation to be had. So if we have time to do that in 2 weeks, that would be great. Also, I think it would be important to start thinking about, I've already gotten some questions about the communication process about these 3 proposals. 4 years ago, and typically for a long time in our district, we've taken it upon ourselves to visit every single school community to explain the proposals and how it impacts, you know, the capital bond, which we'll get to, obviously fluctuates quite a bit by school community. But do we know when we'll have that schedule of, you know, how long? I imagine it takes a time to develop, and thinking about how we can do this now with COVID, it's going to be looking different than it did 4 years ago. Do we, I guess, I know we don't have the plan yet, and I'm expecting it, but do we have an understanding of when we're hoping to have that plan ready?
So we're actually 2 weeks earlier in the process than we were 4 years ago. So we're right on schedule, and we do have a meeting tomorrow morning. We've been looking at the 2018 plan, and we'll be fine-tuning that. So the team that's working on the communications for these measures will kick it into high gear as soon as they have sort of final language at the next board meeting. So that group has been working on exactly what you're discussing.
Okay. And if we even have a rough outline by the next board meeting, I think that would be helpful.
You bet.
Even if we don't have the exact dates at which buildings, I think it's helpful to be able to communicate to people when we're going to be able to have community-specific conversations. That would be great. And in general, I would just want to thank everyone for calculating again, because of how the equation is written in the law. You know, it can obviously, it can go a couple different ways, but this levy is so important for all that we do within North Shore that we consider normal, but that the state doesn't fund. I mean, $21 million out of this goes right to special education. 1/3 of it goes right to special education, and we could go on and on tonight, but we'll annually. So yes, 1/3 of it annually goes right to special ed, and you know, in terms of 7-period days and all the career and technical education classes. So those are the kind of things I'm hoping we can get into a summary document. But thank you for all the work.
I'll make sure we have both the memo for student outcomes and a summary communications document for the next board meeting.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
All right. Thank you, Director Cass. Anyone else? Yeah. Yeah, that was very thorough. Thank you. I agree with Director Cass that summaries would be great. And I know Director Cass and I were talking on the phone earlier today about public input on schools, because you know, our last couple of meetings where it really highlight the major renovations of the schools. And I know it's an ongoing, Dree's looking at me right now, what was he going to say? It's an ongoing list of other improvements that we do at all of our schools, right? Most, whether it's carpet or flooring or roofs or whatever, that is also included in all this money. So, you know, as we move along the process, as we identify those projects that we're planning to cover in the next 4 years, if we could have that on some kind of a list too, that would be great. All right. Dr. Hayes, you have another thought? No, you're good? Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Reed. Okay, where are we at here?
Number
4. All right. We have I-4 resolution number 840, general obligation bonds. Dr. Reed.
Thank you, President Swain. This is resolution number 840, and it refers most specifically to the capital bond. And again, this is an informational item and a topic that has been discussed and debated for several months now. So whatever feedback, questions, adjustments, be happy to entertain those at this time.
Just so excited that we've got the playgrounds, outdoor space, education spaces in this bond, taking it with our PTA here, taking it off the back of our PTAs to fund those. So that's great. That's there.
Okay, anyone else?
President Swain, I had two thoughts about the language on the proposition that will show up on the ballots in King and Snohomish County. We did a good job of listing a lot of the things that will be funded with this money from this bond cycle. But two things that I thought about that are happening with this proposal that I didn't see in here that I thought might be important is the fact that this will reduce the district's carbon footprint by the work that's being done with the modernization of these schools. And the second thing was that this proposal would decrease the district's portables by 1/3. And those are things that I've heard from families for years that are concerns, and I thought that might be compelling since we're doing it if it were in the ballot proposition.
Thank you, Director Kogan. Good points.
I will add, Director Kogan, at this point, we've received an edited paragraph over the weekend. There are a limited number of characters for this ballot language, and the current draft you see exceeds that. So I know they took the word elementary out of all of the schools, is my understanding. So we're going to have to be a little creative to get the language perfect there. I think what tonight is to make sure we have the spirit of, oh, there you go. Cynthia? You do, please, to have the microphone to be on the record.
Superintendent Reed, you are.
Right.
You have to reduce this? Okay. You are precisely correct that there is a 75-word limit on the middle sentence of the ballot proposition. So it's extremely tight, given we have to kind of pick and choose what we're going to say. However, the participation in the voters pamphlet is now mandatory, and there will be an opportunity for an explanatory statement in the voters pamphlet. And so we may add some words. I've written this down to see how we can add words, because that permits us to go up to 200 words. And so we can put it in the resolution and then try to, again, put it in that explanatory statement so that hopefully the voters who get that pamphlet will look at that little longer explanatory statement and perhaps be able to pick it up from there. You also have your pro committee and your con committee. So your pro committee can be just out there pressing that issue very strongly as well. So hopefully there are ways to get that out there, as well as any other advertising materials outside of the ballot that you put out to the general population.
Thank you for that clarification. I suspected that might be an issue with the word limitation, the way things were succinctly written. And then I think the question I have is just what are the things that kind of get in that top ballot that's the most compelling, because some voters will read the voter pamphlet and see the marketing materials. Some may just read the ballot and decide yes or no from what's written.
And that is a discussion among yourselves, whether you want to name all of the schools or perhaps be more generic about what you're actually going to do without naming the specific schools. Keeping in mind there's some language in here. There's probably at least 35 words that we can't change. So you have a number of words to work with, but we rely upon you to tell us what you think will be the most punch that you can get for this sort of thing. We have to try to be explanatory, but we had spent time really identifying the schools. But if that's less important, and just say a number of elementary schools or a number of middle schools, and then describe some of the other projects, we could also do that.
And it's a word count, not a letter character count.
It's a word count. It's a word count. And that, for example, is why we put a pound sign next to the 840, so that only counts as one word. It's however things are put together. So it's definitely a word count. And we are right now at precisely 75.
Thank you.
With these changes.
Thank you.
It's kind of a challenge. Thanks, Cynthia. This time around, we've never touched 8 schools as a major renovation. I mean, I think, and which is a good challenge, I guess.
Anyone else? Capital bond.
Well, and I think Director Kogan has a very good point, because this is a shift in our capital strategy. at least since I've been on the board, in terms of instead of trying to completely renovate schools, which is what was our impediment, because since we have 21 elementary schools, instead of doing really large renovations so that we could touch more schools quicker. Obviously, that's not going to fit in this description, but the outcome of that is reducing the portables. So I'm just going to throw this out here. Of course, editing from the dais is like the worst thing ever. But the phrase that says make building and capital improvements, if that was make building improvements, comma, reduce portables, comma, if you took out the and capital to free up 2 words to put reduce portables, I think Director Kogan's right. Everyone working on this, the 70 plus community members, all the staff, ourselves have heard, obviously we're very committed to reducing our use of portables across the district, and I think Director Kogan's right. That is something that's very important to people. I just want to make that suggestion.
Thank you, Director Cass. Anyone else? Thoughts? Oh, you're good? All right. All right. I don't have anything else. I jumped the gun on my comments on capital projects on the first one, but you know what I meant. All right. Thank you. Our last item here, resolution number 841, technology levy. Dr. Reed.
Thank you, President Swain. And this is the third ballot measure of the 3 under discussion. Again, it's an information item, and it's a renewal of the school technology levy proposal. So I'd be happy to hear any possible adjustments or concerns or questions.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Director Hayes.
Yeah, I think to the earlier conversation about the EP&O levy, just some language around the educational benefit of this levy would be helpful.
Yeah, to again tag on to that, adaptive technology was something we talked about quite a bit, and so that might be, if there's some way to work that in. Again, that was something that we've heard loud and clear from all corners of the district that we need.
Anyone else? Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Reed. Okay, now we will go into policy reviews, of course, of the parameters. For the audience, we review the actual policy that the parameters and the parameter itself that our review of Dr. Reed's performance was based on, to see if anyone has any thoughts or recommendations to change the language moving forward. Anyone have any recommended edits or thoughts? Okay, seeing none. Well, Director McGurty, did you have something? Okay. All right. Now we'll go to our discussion item, North Shore Fall Reopening Plan, reopening update. Dr. Reed.
Thank you, President Swain. As I mentioned, there are 2 topics I want to review. One is the HVAC situation and upgrades. We have spent a significant amount of money, some of that ESSER money that we did receive, doing some upgrades to our HVAC systems. Also want to be responsive to, King 5 News had a story recently on HVAC systems, and they put a bunch of charts and such out there that were honestly quite dated. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at, did another review. So Bruce Scoura, our Director of Support Services, said that in referencing the King 5 story, they had listed 4 of our buildings rated as poor in HVAC. 3 were gym buildings that are large open spaces, and 1 was a space that's actually not used for students any longer. The Lockwood gym system is scheduled for replacement this year. As you know, Lockwood had a number of upgrades last year. The Leota and West Hill are on the list for system upgrades as well. And the vast majority of our buildings fall into the excellent and good rating. One of the things around the scoring used for the charts that were presented, The Building Condition Assessment Program, an ICOS rating system, is a tool to guide capital planning decisions based primarily on the age of major systems and observable condition at a single point in time. These scores are not intended to rate the efficiency level or performance of building systems, nor do they include detailed inspection of individual pieces of equipment to validate level of maintenance or refurbishment of component parts. The assessment process does not include testing of the system performance or an operational analysis of HVAC equipment. They're also aligned to capital project cycles rather than an inspection of HVAC quality, and are intended to inform districts of the life cycles of major facility assets as they weigh future investment priorities, rather than necessarily coming in like water testing or doing actual air quality testing. Some of the changes that were mentioned in the report we've already implemented here at North Shore. We've adapted ventilation procedures for every school, again, to maximize outside air and institute building flushes in accordance with the CDC, the ASHRAE, and Department of Health guidance, which is why last summer we couldn't get any air conditioning to work, because with 50% of the outside air needing to recycle when the air was 100 degrees, everything kind of bogged down. So we are working with the guidance for buildings at this time. We've increased filtration levels with monthly filter changes, which is significantly more frequently than previously, and upgraded filters where feasible as a COVID mitigation measure in accordance, again, with CDC, ASHRAE, and Department of Health guidance. We invest in proactive analysis and monitoring of our HVAC system controls through ongoing control checks to ensure equipment is operating as designed, and any potential equipment issues are identified before they enter the learning or impact the learning environment. And we invest in ongoing maintenance of the HVAC systems at all schools on an annual basis, repairing and replacing failing parts, or in some cases, investing in refurbishments of whole portions of the system. So bottom line is our HVAC systems have been upgraded and are functioning. Questions on HVAC? Well, I think we just read that news story and went, not here, right? Like that's dated. So anyhow, let me move to batch testing. I will say that today we had 795 batches with 5,648 students and staff. A reminder that staff are also being tested. We should get data on those tomorrow. And overall, as I mentioned earlier, we've had last week 2,259 batches with 14 actual positives. And, we're, again, like I said, we're encouraged. We know that this is something the State Department of Health is working hard with us on as well. And with the goal of keeping our students and staff safe and healthy, as well as our schools open, and activities, athletics, co-curriculars, the arts programs being able to continue to function uninterrupted. So I'd be happy to take questions on either of those topics.
Thank you, Dr. Reed.
Just
Dr. Cast?
Yeah, one question related to testing, Superintendent Reed. So the vendor that's helping us with confirmatory testing at Pop Keeney.
Yeah.
I first week rollouts can be tough, but I'm just wondering. I know there have been conversations about adjusting that, and I'm just wondering for an update.
Yeah, it was actually a hot mess, I think would be the best way to describe last Wednesday. The vendor has sub-vendors, and it was not what we would have expected. It should be smoother this week, and we're hopeful by next week we can have an even more convenient option, which we're negotiating right now. So we should not replicate last Wednesday's adventure. So we really appreciate the patience and grace of our community in working with us on that. I think when you roll something like that out with vendors, multiple interfacing vendors, it's been a bit of a challenge, but it's improved. Today went far more smoothly than last Monday, so we're hoping to get up on a wake here shortly.
Great, thank you. And I have to provide feedback, which could be during my report as well, but on our weekly collaboration calls, all other 4 districts were asking questions because they're all investigating. Bellevue starting to roll theirs out. Mercer Island is as well. Lake Washington as well. So I know that King County Health has been reaching out to you and the team in terms of helping them wrap up as well. So I appreciate
right.
the support we can give our neighbors.
We're all in on helping our neighbors. Yep.
For sure.
Thank you, Director Cast. Anyone else? Any questions? All right. Dr. Reed, a quick question on the Popkini testing. I was just curious to how many families that were, in a batch that was positive, how many of those people or roughly took advantage of the free testing that we're providing?
We had 210 families take advantage of the testing, 111 on Wednesday, 45 on Thursday, and 54 on Friday.
Great.
So a total of 210 families took advantage of the confirmatory PCR tests.
That's probably the vast majority of those students that
Absolutely.
were in that, and students and staff.
Yes.
Excellent. That's great. That's all I have. Anyone else? Okay, we're good? All right. Let's see here. We'll move on now to board reports and communication, new business. Anyone have any new business?
I just have kind of a logistical planning question around WASDA annual conference. Because of COVID restrictions this year, there is a hybrid format, but they're capping participation. And so I just wanted to see, and we probably should think about it anyways, starting next meeting in terms of how we're going to participate as a board. I'm thinking the planning dinner that we usually do, the board night out, I don't know, unless we want to pack our parkas and sit outside, I don't know if that's going to work the same, but just I wanted to throw it up, so especially since I know that attendance has been very capped for in-person. I don't know if we've all signed up or not, so throwing it out there.
I think I'm signed up, so if one of you hasn't, I'd be happy to give up my in-person spot.
I think Siobhan signed 5 North Shore School Board members up. Yes.
In person? You're all signed up in person unless they're going to ration spots. I don't know what WASDA's doing, but that shift, that's continuing to evolve as well.
True.
First come, first served, I think. So I think
Oh,
we're good.
okay. Well, maybe we can sell our spots.
Get a couple more inclusive playgrounds, right? Auction them off.
All right, thank you, Director Cast. Any other new business? I guess you did reports. Okay. Move on to board member reports then. And right here on the top of the list is Director Cast. So you can continue your thoughts.
I'm going to need to take a break from being first, but thank you, President Swain. So September 14th, as board liaison, attended the Citizens for a North Shore meeting. September 16th, was very pleased to attend a Woodinville High School football game. Super fun. Great to see everyone. And of course, I'm a sucker for a marching band. It was wonderful. So September 17th, again, that's our Friday East Side Collaboration Board member meeting. Again, testing that meeting, and the following one on the 24th, testing was front and center. Also, September 17th, I was pleased to attend the Centro Cultural de Mexicano reception that serves our community for Hispanic Heritage Month. They were having an artistic display for the next couple of weeks, actually. If y'all want to stop by, they curated Hispanic art from across the state. It's quite lovely. So then also on September 4th with Director Hayes, we met with Representative Dewar to talk about some topics that we've talked about as a board in terms of kind of our carbon footprint, like Director Kogan was talking about before, specifically perhaps the idea about bike lanes I brought up, and I will let Director Hayes talk about the topics she brought up. But there is grant money coming quite a bit for cities for infrastructure, actually. So she was saying our timing is pretty good if we want to get together a summary of our thoughts. And so when we talk about legislative priorities next, maybe we'll get some thoughts down. Thank you, President Swain.
Thank you, Director Cast. Director McGurty.
Thank you, President Swain. Let me see if I can see here. So on Tuesday, September 14th, I attended a Ledge Reps Learn training session for preparation for the Legislative Assembly coming up. And then Thursday, September 16th, also attended the statewide school board director networking call. Friday the 17th, that was just our extra study session on bond and levy. And then Monday, September 20th, I attended a large school district caucus meeting, also in preparation for the Legislative Assembly meeting coming up.
Thank you, Director McGurty. Director Kogan.
Thank you, President Swain. On Monday, September 20th, it was my pleasure to join the North Shore Council PTSA meeting as the board representative. And I just wanted to take a moment to shout out that if there are members in the community that are looking for a great way to volunteer and make a difference in their community, PTSA is a great way to make a difference with your neighbors for your local schools, the district, and even the state with respects to student education and other critical needs that our students have. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Director Kogan. Director Hayes.
Yeah, so pretty repetitive. Also have attended multiple statewide meetings with school board members from around the state, several different formats. Just checking in, seeing how everyone's doing this year. Also have attended multiple different school PTA meetings, hearing how the school year is rolling out, and parents are very excited and kids are excited and happy to be back in classrooms, and staff also excited and I think a bit exhausted already. So, and then I had the opportunity to pass out lunches to families in the virtual program. We've made that change so that they can have access to the lunches, and so got to stand at a couple schools and hand out lunches to families as they came up to pick up their lunches. And then, as Director Cass mentioned, we met with Representative Dewar to talk about the carbon footprint. It was news to me, I think it was for Director Cass, that there is this large amount of money coming to the state for capital around climate change. So I think it would be a great opportunity for us to start having those conversations and make sure that we get access to some of those dollars.
Thank you, Director Hayes. I don't have a lot to add to my usual presidential requirements and meetings and talks to Dr. Reed, other than attending the usual Friday Eastside School District calls of Director Cast. They're always very informative and helpful for sure. All right. That is it for our board reports and communications, and call this meeting adjourned.
Oh, wait.
Oh, do I have something?
Yeah. Legislative priorities, really quick.
Oh, it's not on my list, so sorry.
Oh, but
I forgot. That's my fault, though.
We'll be quick about it.
Thank you. Oh, no problem. I'm sorry I jumped the gun there. There it is on the screen. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. This represents a bit of a reframing from how we've done legislative priorities in the past. And I wanted to get the board's input on this instead of just having a laundry list of requests from the legislature, trying to group them into student outcome framing. I thought it would be a bit more compelling and easier, honestly, for people to follow. We know not all our legislators are educational experts, and so thought this might be a way of grouping it. And so wanted to get the board's thoughts. Did I miss anything? Maybe there's something I shouldn't have included. This was developed before we met with Representative Dewar. And so now I'm thinking under student well-being, we can start talking about some of our carbon footprint ideas. She was very happy to hear that we have electric buses, by the way. She thought she was going to catch us on that one, and we already have some. So, and I've just opened it up. Anyone have any thoughts or suggestions?
So I have one kind of building off the mastery-based learning. That is definitely a movement around the state legislatures working towards it, as well as the State Board of Ed. Both OSPI and the State Board have profile of a graduate work, and I know we're doing some work internally. I have concerns about both the State Board forms and the OSPI one in their list of, what do you want in a profile of a graduate. Neither one of them even offer creativity as an option. And I think as you know, it's a passion of mine, but I think we can all agree that is a necessity for our students in the future. And so something around us making sure that that is part of a profile of a graduate, and that we don't end up in a situation where this profile is developed at the state level and we're trying to do that work here, and it's not either being funded or prioritized.
Wait, well taken. Thank you.
I'd just like to say I like the idea of sort of categorizing some of the bullet points to sort of, I guess, assist our legislators with here's the kinds of things that will serve our students. Here are the kinds of things that will support student well-being. I haven't come up with anything else, another category that would not require us to add more into our priorities list. Things like community, things that would serve the community as a whole, as opposed to our students and within the schools. But I like the idea of sort of drawing attention to the outcome, as you said. So,
All right, thank you.
I'll add, I appreciate the fact that we've stayed focused throughout the years. I look back at some older legislative priorities, and several of the topics remain on the list for today. And I think that's really important that we've been focused on the things that'll really help our district. And hopefully the legislators hearing this over time, there may be some ways that this stuff could get funded or changed and help everybody in the state with respect to student education. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director Cogan. Yeah, no, there's a couple of these that have been on here for several years, it's true, but we're persistent, right? Yeah. But thank you. All right, so I'll make it then a little bit more fleshed out, and then we'll get another draft out.
Great. Oh,
Just-
Marguerite?
just thought, were you planning on putting something in here about our carbon footprint per direct?
I was thinking under student well-being,
Yeah.
because, bike lanes, there's a couple. I mean, it would be lovely. It would help everyone if we could find a way to sustainably reduce traffic around all our school campuses. There's some of the granting you're seeing in cities, they're putting curbs, like protected bike lanes in a lot of cities. If we could get protected bike lanes to our schools, I think it'd be a win all around. So especially if there's capital money out there to do it.
Great. Thank you, Director Cast. Appreciate all your work on this.
Sure thing.
All right. Anything else? The good of the order?
Nope.
All right. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the audience for attending this evening. I appreciate it.